Hello, everyone. Today, I want you to pause for just a moment and think about this. Have you ever noticed that sometimes, without a word being spoken, a woman seems different? Her energy feels softer, her presence more radiant, her body language speaking in whispers that you can almost, but not quite, hear. It's as if something in her world has shifted, something private yet undeniable. We live in a culture where intimacy is often hidden behind closed doors, wrapped in silence, and yet its echoes can be felt in the way someone carries themselves the next day. A man might wonder what changed. Why does she look lighter, more grounded, more alive? And a woman herself might not even realize how much her body reveals about her inner experiences. This conversation isn't about judgment, and it isn't about stereotypes. It's about understanding human connection, how intimacy leaves its fingerprints not only on our hearts, but on our posture, our moods, and the way we engage with the world. When a woman has shared herself in the most intimate way, there are subtle signs, almost invisible unless you pay close attention, that tell a story of closeness, release, and sometimes vulnerability. The first sign is written in her glow. And I don't just mean the cliché of someone looking radiant. I mean the way her skin flushes with warmth, how her eyes appear softer, how her face seems more relaxed. Intimacy activates more than emotion. It stirs biology. After intimacy, her body often releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and serotonin, which brings calm and contentment. That inner cocktail shows up as a glow that no beauty product can imitate. It's not the blush of makeup, but the flush of life itself. Think about it. When you encounter a woman who seems to radiate warmth effortlessly, you might not know why, but you sense that she is carrying the aftertaste of something deeply human, deeply connected. This glow is subtle. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It's not the same as dressing up for an evening out or wearing a smile for the world. It's quieter than that. It's the way her cheeks hold a lingering softness, the way her body seems less tense, less guarded. It's the way her eyes, instead of scanning the room for threats or judgments, seem anchored, as if she feels at home in herself. The second sign lives in her body language. After intimacy, many women unconsciously carry themselves differently. There is often a loosening of the shoulders, a relaxation in the hips, a slower rhythm in the way she moves. It is as though her body, having surrendered and been received, remembers. This is not always about satisfaction in a physical sense, it's about release. A woman who has recently been intimate, often unconsciously, reveals it in the way she inhabits her body. She might not even notice the way her steps feel lighter or how she lingers in her movements instead of rushing. Men often underestimate how much of a woman's inner world shows in her body. When she has been touched with care and attention, she is more likely to move through the world with an ease that is almost impossible to fake. And even when intimacy has left her conflicted or uncertain, her body still carries the imprint. Sometimes that imprint is tension, a sense of withdrawal, or even an avoidance of eye contact. Intimacy leaves traces, whether it brings her joy or discomfort. Think about how you can sense when someone has had a difficult conversation, even if they never tell you. Their shoulders slump, their tone sharpens, their gaze avoids. The body never lies. In the same way, after intimacy, the body whispers what the lips may never speak. And this is where the real work of connection lies, not in reading signs for curiosity alone, but in deepening our sensitivity to the people we love. Now, here's something important. These signs are not universal. Not every woman will radiate in the same way. Not every gesture will mean the same thing. But what remains true is that intimacy shifts energy. A woman who has shared herself intimately carries that shift, and those who are attentive enough can perceive it. Whether it's a softness that wasn't there before, or an openness in the way she engages, these are signs worth noticing, not to judge, but to understand. So, as we begin this conversation, let's hold on to one truth. Intimacy is not just physical. It is emotional, psychological, and spiritual. Its effects ripple outward, far beyond the bedroom. When a woman has just experienced intimacy, her body and presence reflect that story. You see it in her glow, you notice it in her body language, you feel it in her energy, and this is where we begin, by recognizing that intimacy leaves traces. Traces we can choose to overlook, or traces we can learn to honor. Because when we become attuned to these delicate signals, we begin to understand not just the woman in front of us, but the depth of human connection itself. There is another layer to this, one that goes beyond the visible glow or the looseness in her body. It lives in her energy, in the subtle ways she interacts with the world around her. After intimacy, many women exude a certain calmness, a softness in their emotional tone that feels different from the usual rhythm of daily life. It is as if intimacy has pressed pause on the noise of the outside world, and she is moving through life with a quieter, steadier pulse. You might notice that she responds differently to people. Her voice may carry a tenderness, her words may come slower, as though she has nothing to prove in that moment. When a woman has been deeply connected, she doesn't always feel the need to armor herself with defensiveness or sharpness. She doesn't rush to fill silences. Instead, she allows space because inside her she feels full. That fullness is one of the most profound aftereffects of intimacy. It's not visible in the same way as a glowing face, but it's just as powerful because it changes the quality of presence she brings into any room. Presence is everything. We've all walked into a space where someone's energy changes the entire atmosphere without them saying a word. Intimacy can do that to a woman. She enters with a kind of warmth, a receptiveness, a gentle confidence that others can feel without knowing why. That is why so many people find themselves magnetically drawn to her, even if they cannot put their finger on what's different. They sense an aliveness that is rooted in connection. But presence isn't always lightness. For some women, intimacy can stir deeper emotions, vulnerability, reflection, even uncertainty. And that too shows. Maybe she is quieter than usual. Maybe her gaze lingers longer on the ground, or perhaps she appears thoughtful, caught between the intimacy she experienced and the meaning it holds for her. In those moments, her energy doesn't necessarily glow, but it reveals an openness nonetheless. Because intimacy, whether joyful or complicated, has a way of cracking us open, reminding us that we are deeply human, deeply affected by closeness. The third sign, then, is this shift in energy and presence. Sometimes it's radiant, sometimes it's contemplative, but it always has a distinct quality. A woman who has just shared intimacy rarely carries herself with the same armor she wore the day before. Something in her changes, even if only temporarily, and if you are attentive enough, you will notice. Let's look even closer. Beyond her presence, beyond her energy, there is another layer, the subtle emotional transparency that comes after intimacy. Many women, whether they intend to or not, reveal more of themselves in those hours afterward. It's as if intimacy unlocks a door, loosening the grip on the emotions they usually hold tightly. She may laugh more easily, speak more freely, or share thoughts that have been quietly waiting for the right moment to surface. Sometimes she may show vulnerability, expressing doubts, fears, or hopes that she would normally guard. This is not accidental. Intimacy lowers defenses. It tells the nervous system, you are safe, you are seen, you can release. That release doesn't just happen physically, it happens emotionally too. A woman might not consciously decide to reveal herself, but her openness, her willingness to be seen, often flows naturally in the aftermath of connection. Think about the conversations that unfold in the quiet after intimacy, the ones that feel different from the ordinary chatter of daily life. They are slower, gentler, more honest. They are filled with silences that don't feel awkward, but instead feel alive with unspoken meaning. This kind of openness is a powerful sign, and it's not just about the words exchanged. It's about the trust and the emotional availability that lingers long after the physical act is over. Yet, we must be clear, these signs are not universal guarantees. They are not tools to expose or decode women, but to deepen awareness. A woman's glow, her relaxed body, her softened presence, her emotional openness, these are not checklists, they are invitations. Invitations to notice, to appreciate, and above all, to respect the ways intimacy reshapes us. Because when you recognize these signs, you begin to understand that intimacy is not just a moment. It is an imprint. It lingers, it colors, it informs how we show up the next day. And for a woman, those imprints often reveal themselves in ways that can be felt, if only you are paying attention. Connection is a delicate art. Too often, we look for proof instead of presence, for confirmation instead of curiosity. But intimacy isn't about catching someone in a truth. It's about attuning yourself to the subtle music of their being. A woman who has shared herself carries that music in her glow, in her body, in her energy, and in her openness. And when you listen closely, you will hear it. When we think about the traces intimacy leaves behind, there is one that is often overlooked, yet it is perhaps the most telling of all: the eyes. They say the eyes never lie, and this is truer than ever in the hours after a woman has shared herself deeply. Her gaze holds a softness, sometimes even a vulnerability, that is difficult to disguise. Look closely, and you may notice her eyes linger differently. She may meet your gaze with a depth that wasn't there before, as though she is not just looking at you, but into you. Or perhaps her eyes avoid yours not out of disinterest, but because intimacy has left her feeling exposed, and eye contact suddenly feels like too much. Either way, the eyes reflect what words cannot. They reveal the tenderness, the rawness, the closeness that intimacy has stirred. For many women, after intimacy, there is a distinct clarity in the eyes. It is as if the emotions swirling within her rise to the surface, and her gaze becomes a mirror of her inner world. If she feels cherished, her eyes will radiate trust. If she feels uncertain, they will flicker with hesitation. If she feels fulfilled, they will glow with serenity. And if she feels conflicted, they may seem distant, as though she is lost in thought. This is not about catching someone in a moment of truth. It is about recognizing how deeply intimacy touches the human soul, and how the eyes, without permission, carry that truth outward. When a woman has just been intimate, her eyes often betray the complexity of her emotions, revealing both the pleasure of connection and the vulnerability of being known. Another sign lives in the rhythm of her speech and expression. After intimacy, many women unconsciously shift the way they speak. Their voices may become softer, more melodic, as though the act of closeness has tuned them to a different frequency. There is less sharpness, less urgency. Instead, their words flow with a gentleness that mirrors the calm within. Sometimes it is in the pauses, the silences she allows between sentences, the willingness to let moments breathe instead of filling them with chatter. Other times it is in her laughter, richer, freer, unguarded. Intimacy disarms her, and her speech reflects that disarming. She doesn't always need to defend, to argue, to impress. She can simply be. Think of the contrast. Before intimacy, there might be tension, performance, or even guardedness in how she communicates. After, there is often a slowing down, a willingness to rest in the moment, to let words carry connection instead of weight. This shift in tone and rhythm is subtle, but for those who listen with attention, it is unmistakable. And then there is her desire for closeness beyond the physical. For many women, intimacy awakens a longing not only for touch, but for emotional nearness. You may notice her leaning in more, reaching for small gestures of contact, a hand resting on yours, a gentle brush of her shoulder against you, her body turning toward you even in casual conversation. These gestures are not grand, but they are profoundly meaningful. They say, I want to stay connected. I want to linger in this intimacy. It is easy to mistake these gestures as casual habits, but they are often much more. They are the body's way of extending intimacy beyond the bedroom, carrying the connection into the ordinary moments of the day. A woman who has just shared herself may instinctively seek to preserve the thread of closeness, weaving it into every gesture, every small act of togetherness. And here lies something important. Intimacy doesn't end when the physical act does. For a woman, the experience often reverberates long after. It shapes her glow, her body language, her presence, her eyes, her voice, her gestures. It is a tapestry of signs, woven together in ways that cannot be neatly categorized, but can certainly be felt. To truly understand these signs is not about suspicion or curiosity. It is about presence. It is about becoming attuned to the depth of another person, respecting the vulnerability that intimacy leaves behind. Because what these signs ultimately reveal is not just that she has been intimate, but that intimacy matters. It touches her, it shifts her, it leaves traces that are impossible to erase. And if you are someone who has the privilege of being close to her, these signs are not simply clues to notice. They are invitations to honor her openness, to respect her vulnerability, and to cherish the trust that allows her to show up so fully, so unguarded. Because at the end of the day, intimacy is not just about bodies. It is about the soul's willingness to be seen. And when a woman has shared herself, the signs she carries are not evidence, they are echoes. Echoes of connection, of vulnerability, of the timeless human longing to be close, to be known, to be held. There is yet another way intimacy lingers, one that reveals itself not in the face or the eyes, but in the rhythm of her everyday behavior. After sharing herself, a woman often carries with her a quiet shift in how she engages with the ordinary. Tasks that once felt mundane suddenly seem infused with a softness. You might notice her humming while she prepares her coffee, smiling at strangers more easily, or moving through her day with less urgency. It is as though intimacy has reminded her body what it feels like to rest, to release, to trust. This shift may sound small, almost invisible, but it is powerful. It speaks to how intimacy is not contained in a single moment, but seeps into the way she inhabits the world. Even her relationship with stress can look different. She may handle small frustrations with greater patience, letting them roll off her shoulders instead of clinging to them. When a woman feels intimately seen, her nervous system often slows down, grounding her in ways she may not even consciously recognize. But intimacy does not always bring ease. Sometimes it unsettles. Sometimes it leaves her thoughtful, restless, caught between desire and doubt. In those moments, her behavior may lean in the opposite direction. She may seem distracted, moving through her tasks as if her body is present but her mind elsewhere. Her responses may come slower, her silences longer. This, too, is intimacy at work, not as a balm, but as a mirror, reflecting back to her the complexity of her emotions. What matters is not whether the shift is light or heavy. What matters is that intimacy always leaves an imprint. Whether it makes her glow or withdraw, it alters the texture of her presence. That is why it is such a sacred force, because it changes us in ways we cannot always predict or control. For those who care to notice, this awareness becomes an invitation to listen more deeply. If her energy feels lighter, let it inspire you to celebrate her openness. If her energy feels heavier, let it remind you to offer comfort rather than questions. Too often, we are tempted to interpret signs for our own curiosity, forgetting that behind every sign is a person, layered with feelings and complexity. The truth is, intimacy is not just about pleasure or desire, it is about safety. It is about whether a woman feels safe enough to let herself be seen, to let her guard down, to let her body tell the truth of what she is feeling. And after that experience, her behavior, whether expansive or reserved, reflects exactly that. To recognize these shifts is not to hold power over her. It is to hold space for her. It is to understand that intimacy, at its core, is not about what you can take, but about what you can witness, honor, and nurture. When you begin to see her in this way, you realize that every glow, every softened gesture, every thoughtful silence is a doorway to deeper connection. And perhaps this is the greatest sign of all, that intimacy changes not just how she looks or behaves, but how she invites you into her world. Through her openness, her vulnerability, or even her quiet withdrawal, she is telling you something profound that she has allowed herself to feel. And in that, she reveals the deepest truth of intimacy, that it is not an act, but a transformation. Intimacy, at its essence, is not just about two bodies coming together. It is about the way that experience lingers, reshaping the way a woman feels, the way she moves, the way she carries herself in the world. These signs we've explored are not puzzles to solve. They are not codes to crack. They are living expressions of what it means to open oneself, to allow closeness, to embrace vulnerability in a world that so often teaches us to hide. And this is the point I want you to remember. When a woman has just shared intimacy, what you see in her is not a secret to uncover, but a truth to respect. Her glow, her softness, her energy, her gaze, her gestures, they are not evidence, they are poetry. They are the quiet testimony of how intimacy transforms us from the inside out. What makes this conversation important is not curiosity, but awareness. Too many of us rush past the subtle, dismiss the invisible, and fail to recognize the ways human beings show themselves to us. But the beauty of intimacy is precisely in these small traces. They remind us that we are not machines. We are not meant to compartmentalize every experience. We are porous, affected, alive, and when intimacy touches us, it spills over into everything we are. So the invitation is this: become a student of presence. Learn to notice without judgment, to see without grasping, to feel without trying to control. When you notice her glow, honor it. When you sense her openness, cherish it. And when you perceive her vulnerability, hold it gently. Because intimacy is not about what you discover in someone else. It is about what you are willing to hold with care once it has been revealed. And for the women listening, know this: the signs you carry after intimacy are not weaknesses. They are not things to hide or to fear. They are reminders that you are capable of depth, of connection, of living fully awake to your desires and your emotions. To glow, to soften, to feel. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is the very essence of being alive. So, as we close, let us not think of intimacy as a moment that ends when the lights go out. Let us think of it as a presence that lingers, shaping who we are and how we meet each other in the world. Because intimacy, in its truest form, is not about possession, it is about recognition. And when you recognize these traces in a woman, you are witnessing not just a sign of what has happened, but a glimpse into the extraordinary mystery of human connection. That, in itself, is worth honoring.